This episode of the Capsule in Conversation is brought to you by Harrogate Springwater. Famous for its waters since 1571, Harrogate is Britain's premium natural source water. Hello all, you are listening to the Capsule in Conversation podcast. I'm Natalie Anderson and today I'm joined by one of Hollyoaks' most loved and recognisable faces, the gorgeous Stephanie Waring, to talk perimenopause in the public eye, the pressure on women to stay youthful and putting yourself first. So sit back, relax and get ready to join us in our conversation. Hello all, I hope you're all well and have had a wonderful week. I cannot believe that this is the last episode of this series. Where on earth has the time gone? I've absolutely loved chatting with all of my amazing guests so far this year, as they've all brought something amazing, unique and fresh to the podcast. And thankfully, we're not quite done yet. We do have room for a little one. And although my guest today may be petite in stature, she is one of the biggest stars of Hollyoaks, having played the role of Cindy Cunningham since 1996. Away from Chester, she's also appeared in The Royal, Holby City, Coronation Street and Aussie drama Crash Palace, alongside putting her skates on for the 10th series of ITV's Dancing on Ice. But she is no ice queen. She is the bubbly and bright, the lovely Steph Waring. Hi, Steph.
Hi, Nat. You okay, love?
Yeah, it's so lovely to have you with me.
I know. This is actually my first podcast that I've done, apart from Hollyoaks. I did one for Hollyoaks, but yes, I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm sure you'll be very gentle with me. I'm very excited though.
Oh, please don't be nervous. Now, this is hilarious because this podcast came about from a very frank and very open chat that we were having in the dressing room about perimenopause symptoms, and the both of us going, oh my God, so you'll never guess, and you'll never guess. And because we'd never talked about it before.
Like, because you were in my pod, I opened the door and like, oh my God, Nat, hi. And literally it was like a whirlwind of blah, 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 blah. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're going through that. And I'm going through that. And yeah, so, there was a lot to discuss. I hope we can recreate that chat though. It was very off the cuff and open and honest.
And it was enlightening as well. It was like, oh, hooray. We were literally looked at each other and were like, oh, we found our people.
Exactly, yeah, because I think there's a lot of us out there our age who actually don't even know what it is we're actually going through. So I think having a conversation about it is so, so important. And this is my first time ever talking about it. So, I mean, for me personally, I do think it's important to be aware because I thought it was some kind of sort of Nando's
peri sauce.
Peri Nando's menopause. Didn't see that on the menu.
Well, before we go on to chat all things hormones, we will talk about acting first. I mean, you and I first met on The Royal on one of your breaks away.
That was nearly 20 years ago now. So I did a guest star on The Royal in 2004, and most of my scenes were with you. That's when we first met. Yeah.
All that. God, 20 years ago, when you say that now, like we were saying, I don't feel old, but then you go 20 years ago, and we're like, oh my God.
25, I think. It must have been 25, yeah.
I mean, but obviously alongside that, you've played Cindy for on and off for the last 25 years. But I found out you weren't the original Cindy. There was somebody else before you.
Yeah, so it's a funny story. It's actually been 3 Cindys. No one knows this. So there was a Cindy that didn't have any lines, really. I think that the character was more of a sort of an extra character at the beginning, and then I don't know who that was or who the actress was. I don't think there's even an IMDb on the woman, so she wants to come forward. I played her first.
I'm the Cindy.
Then Laura Crossley played Cindy for 6 months, and she left to do Where the Heart Is. So yeah, the role came up. I went along to the audition, and I got the part the very same day that I went for the audition. So the rest is history. 1996.
Oh my God! So at that point, were you already studying acting? Was it something that you'd always wanted to do?
I'd actually started at the Oldham Theatre Workshop, where most homegrown Manchester talent is is born. A lot of Coronation Street stars there. Anna Friel was there, Anthony Cotton, Lisa Riley. I was in that kind of group. I then went on to study at the Actors Studio in Manchester, which was more of like a night school, which I put myself through. And then I probably got an agent after about 6 months of being there. And when I was like 17, 18, I looked about 13 or 14 years old. So it was great because, you know, playing your age down at that age is great because you don't need a chaperone. You know, you can play, you know, you're older, so you can play younger. So the roles, it was great for me at that time to be getting those kind of roles. So, yeah.
And from, you know, there, obviously, like we've said, you know, then you land the job of Cindy, and you had some amazing storylines, especially in those early days. I remember this one so vividly, the teenage pregnancy storyline. And it was just so hard hitting. And it's been one of those soaps, really, I think, taking the reins on from Brookside, you know, which was the Channel 4 soap at the time, and then it moved across to Hollyoaks, always really pushing the boundaries. And even more recently, the storyline that you've had with Gary Lucy with his dementia. I mean, how has that been for you?
Well, can I just first say that I was the first person to ever have a baby on Hollyoaks? The first ever one. And there's been plenty since then. I've got kids that I didn't even know I had. The current storyline at the minute, which we have just wrapped up with Gary, has been probably one of the most wonderful but yet hardest storylines that I've had to date. To have been given this gift of working with the incredible Gary Lucy for the last 3 years. He became such a close friend of mine, such a giving actor, the loveliest man. We laughed a lot. But also, you know, obviously the dementia storyline was very close to Gary's heart, and he brought this to the producers and wanted to do this. And that's when they put his character with my character. And the chemistry from the off was, you know, it was undeniable. So, you know, we just really had a lot of fun with it. But then obviously when it got into the, you know, obviously him losing himself to this, you know, terrible disease, you know, that's when, you know, I had to do my research. It's about the people that it affects, you know, around that, the person that's going through it. But the hardest part was saying goodbye. I don't want to get upset. Filming those scenes was the hardest day. It was the hardest day because it was real. It was real, raw emotion. And it wasn't just me. It was the other actors that were saying goodbye to him on the day as well, in the scenes as our characters. And we all had a turn, and everyone was just in bits, and everyone was crying at everyone else's, and Gary's just lay there. Like, you could see sometimes tears trickling down, you know, his face, because, you know, it was just so emotional. He's been in the show since I think 97, you know, 97, 98, you know, on and off, just like myself. And, you know, it's family at the end of the day, and knowing that he's never going to be back, that's sad.
It's really hard, and I think that's a bit with actors that, you know, with the public, when you're watching the show and stuff, you sometimes we do become a family, don't we? You know, like, you become a family, and when you've existed in the show for as long as like you guys have, you know, it's like a college, like when you're an alumni at a college, and you're always going to have that bond where you've worked together and you've got that family history. It is difficult, and I know for all of you, like, you went to Mallorca to do some scenes out there, and you had lovely Kelly there as well that plays Zara, his sister. And it is about, you know, that letting go and moving on. And it is difficult, as it is in life, isn't it?
Yeah, but they do move you on really quick.
Yeah, they do.
Get the new shit. Like, what?
Let me grieve. Let me grieve.
I'm having a party. What's going on? No, you know, it's the world of soap. Unfortunately, you know, that train keeps on going and you can't get off it. You know, it just keeps on going and going, and it's story. It's moving it along, and you have to keep it exciting and engaging for the audience. And yes, you grieve along with the characters, but you also need to find that light as well, you know.
And, like we've said, you've been part of the show for a very, very long time, on and off, and come in at different parts of its journey, the show's journey itself, and back in the 2000s. And I think lots of shows went through this kind of transition anyway. Hollyoaks became more synonymous with being like a sexy soap, youthful brand. It appealed to teens, to adults, predominantly young cast that were like the pinnacle of sexy soap stars. And now, even though it's definitely moved away from that time period, and, especially with Lucy Allen coming in and challenging it in a different way and moving it away from that, it still does have a bit of that reputation with it. Now, as a woman, it's difficult when we're getting older. How do you move with that, and how are you navigating that now?
Vibe, babe. It's a vibe. That's what I say. So, do you know what? You are absolutely right. Back in the day, I was never that sexy character though. Like back then, when it was the sexy show, I wanted to be in the magazines with all the other girls, but I just kind of didn't look like the other girls back then.
Stop it.
No, that's another story. But it's it's a very sexy show, and that's what that time was, because there was all the lads mags. Women were, I would say celebrated almost, but we loved it. We lapped it up. We felt sexy, or everyone else felt sexy. I don't know. And that's just what we did. But now it has moved dramatically away from that. I think probably the late 2000s, I'd say from especially when I went back in 2008, it really moved away pretty much not long after that from, not being a more serious soap, but just the tone of the show. It was more about family. It becomes more about the stories of everyone who's grown up with the show, and becoming more issue based rather than it being known for, we're going to see some tits when we turn on Channel 4. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's more than that,
because there's a pressure, isn't there as well, to kind of uphold that as an actor. I know I definitely felt that across at Emmerdale. My character was one of those characters, and for me, I did feel that pressure quite a lot. And that we used to have the sexiest soap awards and all that kind of thing, and then they did get rid of that. They were getting rid of that as I was leaving Emmerdale.
I like them though. I quite like them. I'm like, oh yeah, he's hot, or she's really fit. I'd never be up for it, but like I definitely get the pressures of definitely growing up with the show. I actually went back to the show in when I was 30, and me as Stephanie Waring, like I've never felt like I'm sexy at all. I think that I probably have I'm a quite insecure person. I am not so much now in my 40s, which is really weird. But Cindy has always been sexy. So my character has always been able to just turn it on. And that's what I love about her. Like the fact that that I can do that as her. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I've still carried that through. The way they dress me, not so much in a way that it's slutty or anything like that. But she's very always put together. And when I wear her clothes, I do still feel sexy. But when I look in the mirror sometimes and I can see myself looking older, there is so much pressure going through my mind. I'm going, oh my God, I need to book a Botox appointment. Oh my God, I need this, I need that. And I know that I don't. But at the same time, I do have those pressures because I know that I'm going to be on TV and people are going to see it. I'm going to be photographed. And then there's the social media aspect of do you put a filter on it? Do you make, they're the pressures. But for me, as my character, I do kind of like the fact that she still feels empowered, if that's the word. I think she's always felt that way. And I think that she empowers herself even when she's feels like shit. Do you know what I mean?
That's exciting. I think that's a nice thing in the sense that even if you're not, once you switch her head on, it's a different mindset, which then does allow you to still be in touch probably with your own sexuality and your own kind of sexiness. And because as you say, when we wake up in the morning and it's hard work, and we are moving into our 40s, and this is the conversation that you and I were having, and we were like, oh, I'm tired, and I was saying to you, oh, I keep forgetting everything, I can't believe it. And then bang, here we go. Well, you know, how old are you? Well, I'm nearly 41. And you're like, I'm 43. And this,
I'm 44.
44.
Yeah, 44.
She
Yeah.
looks
I'm not
amazing.
old, man.
No, you're not. So this is the conversation then that we started was about the perimenopause, because I've said on this podcast many times, I'm like, I'm convinced I'm going through it. You know, we had Denise on not long ago and she was telling me about bloods, and we had Dr. Sahar on, who was amazing. And then you said to me, oh, I had mine done. So now you just tell me a little bit about your journey, because it was so refreshing and amazing for me to hear another woman kind of my age talking about this.
Yeah, well, this is something that I never thought would ever be on my radar until my 50s. I thought menopause is for when you're like in your like 50s, late 50s, and that's when obviously everything shuts down, no more babies, and you know, life's pretty much over. I never thought about it before because I've never thought of myself as getting older. I don't feel older. I hope I know better, but you know, I don't feel older. I don't particularly. I pay. Obviously, I look after myself and pay attention to it and maintenance and all that. Anyway, I digress. But last year I started feeling really, really poorly, and I couldn't sleep. Insomnia was a massive thing, and just felt just down a lot in general, no energy and tired all the time. Sometimes I'd sleep, sometimes I wouldn't, and I was like, there's something not right. I said to my fiance, and I was my boyfriend at the time, but my fiance, I was like, there's something wrong, that I don't know what it is, but I just don't feel like myself. And I can understand why women in their 30s or maybe even younger have these kind of symptoms, and they go to their GPs and they are misdiagnosed with depression, because it did feel to me like I was going through some sort of anxiety and depression. So I went to my doctor and I got all my bloods done, everything apart from my hormones, and they came back all fine. I thought I was anemic. That was the thing. I thought I'm anemic because I'm always anemic, and I always have low levels and stuff. So I thought that was it. So I must just need more iron. But no, everything was fine. And the nurse who actually gave me the results said, have you not had your hormone levels checked? And I was like, my hormones? Oh, that was another thing. Yes. Sorry, I missed a period. So I can't tell you how many pregnancy tests I've taken, because obviously Miss Fertile over here, do you know what I mean, thinks obviously I'm going to have another baby. Like, not that that's what I wanted to do, but you know, I'm thinking, well, I'm obviously pregnant. So I'm not pregnant. I'm like, oh, well, that's weird. Because then I eventually obviously got my period. So she said, because I'd mentioned this to the nurse, said, well, have you not had your hormone levels checked? So I was like, well, no. So I phoned the doctor and I said, can I book an appointment to get my bloods for my hormone levels? So I got them checked, and the results came back, and they said, well, they are a little bit on the low side. So I was like, well, what? And I'd actually then been listening to my good friend Davinia Taylor on her Instagram talking about perimenopause. And I'm like, what hell is perimenopause? Like, so I'm listening to her, I'm like, so you're telling me that 10 years before you go through menopause, us women have to go through insomnia, depression, weight gain, anxiety, brain fog, like all of these symptoms before we actually go through menopause? So I'm like, well, that's exactly what's happening with me. So anyway, when the doctor said, you know, they're on the low side, so I said, well, what can I do? Is there any, you know, can I get HRT? They left me for a few months to say, you have to have not had a period for a year before we can give you anything. But I'm like, insomnia, all sorts, and I'm going crazy. So I spoke to a different GP, and then she saw me again and said I could have the Mirena coil, which has a slow release of progesterone, and I would have estrogen as the HRT, you know, the replacement. So that was all fine. Got the gel. But then it was awful. I was like, what's going on now? Like, I'm crying all the time. Like, you know, obviously, you know, it needs to kick in. And so Denise Welsh put me in touch with a specialist who basically, I sent my bloods to, and she said to me, Steph, you're not perimenopause, you're very menopause, meaning that I am on a really low scale and I need to up my estrogen. And it's exactly what I did. And I started within a couple of weeks to feel more like myself again. And I'm still up and down sometimes. Like you say the wrong thing and I'll burst into tears, but I feel a lot more like myself. I'm sleeping a lot better. My anxieties aren't as bad, and neither is the brain fog. But yeah, that's kind of pretty much my journey so far.
And do you feel, because I know when we were talking about it, I do on your behalf, and like I say, who's to know what my bloods are going to be like when I eventually get them done, when I'm hopefully going to get them done in the next couple of months. But I feel quite angry. And when I watched Davina's documentary, Sex, Mind and Menopause, and they were saying, you know, that it really should be offered to younger women and we should be knowing about this. And do you feel a bit angry in the sense that you think, why didn't I know about this?
I'm angry at the fact that we haven't been educated. We have been educated at a younger age in schools. Like, this is what's going to happen. You know, we talk about biology and sex education, and you know, pregnancy and like motherhood, and you know, all of this. But when you get to that part of your life, well, we're not going to discuss that. You're just going to have to deal with it. This is 50% of the population is going to have to go through the menopause. But unfortunately, no one tells you, well, it starts happening 10 years at least before you're actually going to go through the menopause. So that angers me in a way. The only thing is like you said, you've not had your bloods done yet. So you would need to get your bloods tracked before you take any hormone replacement. I only had one lot done. So to get mine tracked wouldn't necessarily reflect what my actual, like what estrogen I have in my body, because I'm actually taking a replacement. But knowing that at the age that I am, and that the fact that they are at that low level, I do need estrogen. And I'm telling you now, my skin has never been better. You know, like when you're younger and you're pumping like loads of estrogen around your body and your skin's great and like, you know, it's all collagen and bouncy. Like, that's how I feel right now. I've not had a spot for a while, so that's like one of the good things that have come out of it.
But isn't that amazing though? And you think that for years and years, like generations of women have literally just been like written off and like, oh, you know, that was one of the things we talked about, wasn't it? Saying, oh, the stigma attached to women plus 40 and feeling dried up, and therefore their own pride not maybe wanting to acknowledge those symptoms, or not wanting to put their hand up and say, oh, well, actually, that could be me. Whereas these kind of conversations are really necessary, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, because I felt exactly what you just said. I had the stigma attached. I burst into tears when I found out. I was inconsolable. I thought, I'm old. Like, the one thing I didn't want to get old was that. Like, you don't want that getting old, do you? You don't want to be drying up. You know, that's not sexy. You want to feel sexual still. You know, you don't stop wanting to have, you know, those feelings because you get to a certain age. But it was, I felt old. I felt, you know, I can't even describe how I felt. With the stigma being attached to it, and I think that's why we need to talk about it, because it needs to not be this is just an old, you know, like, you know, that you get to a certain age and that's it. I think it needs to be addressed that women, you know, women in our 30s and our 40s, you know, but there are things that we can do about it.
Well, this is it, because you said to me as well, you know, you were in a relatively newish relationship at the time, and you know, obviously now Tom is your fiance, and you had this conversation with him and he's been incredibly supportive. But that's important, isn't it?
He's literally like we were on the phone the other night, and he said he spoke to his stepmom about it, to get advice, to say, is there anything that I should know or I should be doing? He said, I want to learn as much as I can about it so I can support you, which is so important, because if you've got a partner who just goes, oh, it's the hormones, or oh, you're behaving like that again, or, you know, doesn't understand what you're going through and makes it about them, because they may be feeling sensitive because you might be kicking off because, I don't know, they've like not put a dish away, you know, or picked a towel up off the floor. And, you know, those little things can be very triggering. Not that I've done that. I'm not, luckily, you know, I've obviously had a few breakdown, like crying and, you know, spells and things like that, or taking things a little bit too personally when it's got nothing to do with him. But he wants to be able to understand so he can be there for me in a way that he can help manage my emotional reaction to things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and also, you know, that thing of just, you know, with libido as well, that, you know, that you're not pushing him away, that actually you do really want him and you do really love him, but there's just something that's not your fault or his fault missing at that moment.
The thing is, I mean, luckily, like, my libido's been all right, and like sometimes through the roof, luckily. But this last couple of weeks, I've thought, oh my God, like, it's the last thing that I want. Like, and I sat down and communicated, said, this is not anything to do with you. I'm just feeling this way. And he was like, you take all the time you need. And it was only a couple of days, and I'm this is what happens when you're in a new relationship. You know, you think you're out of commission for a couple of days and that's it. But, you know, it's fine. Like, but I do think communication, even with someone, even if you don't have a partner, I think even with someone who has gone through it or is going through it, that you can talk to about these things, because I think if you don't have that, you could drive yourself mad.
It can be really lonely, can't it? In the sense that you think to yourself, oh, you know, I probably go through this on my own. And as you said earlier, for a lot of women, because we're at this age and we tend to be in good careers at this point, but we're still managing children and we're managing households. And in previous, a lot of the GPs have just been handing out, you know, like antidepressants and saying, oh, I think you're depressed. And actually, there's so much more in it than that, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, an antidepressant pill isn't going to up your estrogen levels. That's the one thing that's missing. Like, I think the hormones play a huge role in our health and our balance with everything. And when your hormones are out of whack, and like, it's like kids, like teenagers growing up, their hormones are all over the place. I've got a 16-year-old daughter who will fly off the handle if, I don't know, she breaks a nail, or when she can't get her eyelashes on, and I'll hear the screams from the room, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And she's just having a fit because, you know, and when she's due on a period, oh God, I hope she doesn't listen to this. She's moody as like, and I just want to give her a little like,
I mean, that's another area, you know, like for where you're at, you know, motherhood and mothering a teenager. I mean, how is that? Like, what has that been like?
I feel for you when it comes to your turn. No, you know, when they say, when you know people who've got kids and they go, wait till the teenagers. You think it's hard now, and you're like, no, not my kids. My kids are great. They're so good. No, they're not. No, I'm kidding. No, what's difficult is because you are, my youngest is 11, so I've got a second one to come. But Mia is now 16. She'll be 17 in a couple of months. So we've, the last couple of years, been going through, I think, her finding herself. And because she has got her own opinion and her own mind and she thinks she's all growing up, I feel like sometimes she doesn't really want to listen to me. So there are these little battles. And I think because she's turning into a young woman. I mean, if you think about it, I remember being 18 when I got Hollyoaks and I'd left home and moved to Liverpool. This is only like, she's 18 next year.
Yeah.
And I still think her as a child almost sometimes. So I do find like there are these little battles that I think sometimes I'm not going to win, or, you know, I just like, oh, just get on with it. Or whatever. Sometimes I don't know what to do. I haven't had a teenager before. I don't have a handbook for this kind of thing. The only thing I go off is how I was raised. Times have changed though. And I think these bloody phones have a lot to do with it.
drive us mad. Honestly, I have this conversation again. One of the beefs of mine on this podcast is social media and its impact on young people. And you just want to throw it away, don't you?
I grew up without social media. So did you.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful for that. If I could be grateful for anything, it was the time that I grew up. And when, you know, you had to run home from, you know, school to ring your best mate on your house phone, the landline, or your phone. There's no internet. No one could look anyone up. And everything's so accessible these days. Celebrities are so accessible these days. You can put something online and it's on the internet. I know that I've like said a couple of things on my stories and it's ended up as a headline in the Sun. But that was one thing as well, like, oh my God, it was a joke. I'm just going to say it on here. But I was asking for tips about insomnia. And someone had put, have you tried like sex? And someone, have you tried like vodka? And I went, I've tried both of those and trust me, it doesn't work. And that was Steph Waring, try sex and vodka to help with insomnia. Like, what the hell? It's
you can't be flippant.
You can't say anything like without them going, oh, what can we find? So it's, you know, social media, it's like, that's where I think now stories come from a lot with what you do put online, and also pictures and videos and things.
So this is the thing, is social media, you know, it's got a lot to answer for in terms of especially now with young people and the, you know, like the body dysmorphia and the filters and everything else. And I know you've talked about this very openly before, the fact that you struggled with an eating disorder in your teens, you know, earlier on in your life. And it's something that you've, you know, battled against and you've come out the other side, even though you've said, you know, it doesn't necessarily always leave you.
It doesn't go away, and I don't think it'll ever go away. I've just learned to manage it. I've just learned to live with it and have routine, and I'm not completely strict, you know, but this is my worry for young girls, impressionable girls who are seeing unrealistic expectations on, you know, online. Mine was, I wanted to look like Kylie Minogue when I was like, you know what I mean?
I mean, you are Diddy.
No, she was my idol, still is my idol. And this perfect figure, and I was this fat little like 11, 12-year-old, and, you know, just went on a diet that never ended, unfortunately for me. But obviously there's a lot of mental health, you know, it's attached to that. I hate social media. I don't like using my Instagram. I do it because I really wish that we could just have like an hour just to discuss this, because I feel like I have to post on there to stay relevant. And I really wish that I didn't have to do anything. I hate taking selfies. I remember when selfies became a thing, and I used to feel so embarrassed about putting a camera up to my face and posing and then going, oh, that's crap, do it again. And like, yeah, we do it and then we'll post it. And it's like, it's just that for what? For who? Who are we doing it for? And then there's the stories, and it's like, well, what do I put up on a story? Like, who am I talking to? Like, it's even the advertising stuff for people. I feel so embarrassed. I'm like, hashtag, oh, no one cares.
But you're right, though, that it perpetuates itself because of the rise of the influencer, which really, it's about the influencer. You know, if you think we wanted to do the job that we do because we love acting, but unfortunately now the two kind of almost go hand in hand. It's difficult to be part of our industry without being some kind of influencer in whatever capacity, because it's merged so much. Because I agree with you, it's really difficult. I mean, I've tried really hard to kind of separate mine, and I've had this conversation with other people before when we've talked about digital and, you know, the rise of digital on this podcast, because it is incredibly difficult to separate yourself and have something for yourself that you think, no, this is the real me that's at home, and yet this is a work version of me, which we've all got. You know, we do have our work persona, because otherwise it becomes, like you say, really difficult to manage. It's kind of, you start feeling like, what am I doing? It's just a society.
I don't know how to do that, what you've done. I'm just me on there. And you know what, when I do my stories videos, I'm just a gobby shy. Like, I'll just say what comes out my mouth. I'm very unfiltered. I'm not very good at being a different version of me. So it's like I'm either going to take a picture of, oh, I'm on a night out, or I'm with Tom, or I'm with my kids, and I don't like putting my kids on there too much. Stories is the same. Like, I just think, well, I'm not a content creator. I'm not an influencer. And, yes, we do get sent things as well, but we should be getting paid for it. It's free, it's advertisement. So it's those things that if people want us to, put something to help promote their business, well, you got to pay us for it, because we are in effect giving you advertisement. But that's where it gets into like, do you know what I mean? That's the influencer side of things. So it's, how do you do that? But you need to know the worth. It's your worth though as well, because some people don't know the worth, and some people's Instagrams I see is like a QVC shopping channel, like hashtag gifted this, hashtag gifted that. Are you getting paid for that, love? No, you're not. Well, you're undermining other people, because people go on there to get paid, but oh no, so and so will do it for free. That winds me up. So I just try and I don't know, stay out of it.
It is hard though. It's really hard. It's going back to what you said earlier. And I had this very same conversation with my friends last night about, I almost feel like social media is going in such a direction that it's going like, I don't know, where it's becoming so just all consuming, and that we're having to try and take steps away from it and take steps back from it to retain some kind of normality, to have some kind of real life, even especially with kids, getting them out playing like normal and getting them off tech. But the pandemic didn't help, did it? Because we had to give them tech kind of to help us.
What I hate doing is threatening to take the iPad off them, because then I take them off and I'm like, damn, I've really screwed myself there.
Here's a little dance with mum. Let me entertain you.
Oh. No, I completely agree with you. But it's do you know what it is as well? It's like, I don't like having my phone out on a night out. I like conversations. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes I'm like, oh, let's get a picture. And then I can put it on his. Why am I want to get a picture and put it on Instagram? It's like a little photo album. Like, what is it for prosperity? I've got it on my phone, but I've took my like count off now on my Instagram, because I'm like, well, I used to think, well, what am I doing it for? Am I doing it for likes? Am I doing it to get more followers? Am I doing it just because I want to show a nice picture? What am I doing it for? And I thought, well, I don't want to do it for any of those things. So I took my like count off, because I'm like, well, I don't want to be that person who's like, oh, look how many, like, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I took that off. But yeah, no, I'm just one of them. I do like having actual conversation with people. Like me and Tom, like, we don't have our phones on at dinner, or anything like that. And we will have conversation. We never rarely watch TV either. It's just always conversation. But at the same time, I'm like, let's just put this on the ground.
Because like you say, there's the pressure to be relevant in our industry,
It's going down, babe. Like, they do. Can you not? Like, if I look sometimes, like, do you know what's really weird? I went to Mexico in February for my birthday, and this is what's winding me up. If I put a bikini picture on or a low-cut top of me, my likes go through the roof, and mine predominantly women follow me. But if I put a picture on of just me in it's hardly anything. And then, or if I don't use it, my followers drop down. But when I was in Mexico, I got about like 3,000 extra followers, like 4,000. And I'm like, this is weird. Is it because I'm in another country? Like, it's really, really, really bizarre. But it was that kind of like euphoria of, oh my God, I'm getting more followers. And I kind of had to have a little word with myself and go, who cares? It doesn't matter.
But I know what you mean. And I sometimes think as well, like with the algorithm, what are people seeing? Are Instagram showing those pictures, that like the bikini type pictures, or the more sexier content pictures to get more likes, and therefore then it perpetuates it. So then people do more of that content, and then they get more likes. So then they keep doing it, and then the people that are just putting kind of normal content, it's getting wasted, and there's things that's not being seen and what's being seen. So they're kind of curating the narrative and curating what's going on and what's on your feed.
Think a bit like that. Thing is, I don't want to be getting my boobs out every now and again just to get a few extra likes and followers.
Well, Well, you don't have to. And this is the thing, is about stepping away from it, isn't it? And, you know, especially with kids, you know, and like setting an example for your children. And you know, we talked the other day about your approach to exercise and how that's changed over the years. I caught this woman, can I just say, doing like a almost one-handed lift or something, which was lifting her whole body on one forearm, and she was like, I needed to show somebody. Can somebody, I'm so glad you're here. And it was amazing.
Oh, thank you. No, but it's crazy because I put it on my Instagram the other day, because like I did explain on my story, I've been doing yoga since my early 20s. It's probably one of the first forms of exercise since my anorexia days that I kind of really got into, because everyone was going on about yoga. It was like this new thing, yoga, even though it's been going around like since BC. But I've not ever had a lot of upper body strength. So I was doing weights for a couple of years. I'd quit drinking and all these things. I was in the gym and I did notice body changes. But for me, I do love lifting weights, but I've always liked to have more of a dancer kind of body, that kind of lithe, kind of more sort of lean. What's that word?
Athletic, svelte. Athletic,
yeah. Svelte kind of physique, because I'm petite. But when I start to lift weights, my bottom half gets a bit bigger and this gets a little bit more scrawnier, and I just feel a little bit, I don't know, just out of balance. So I decided to do a little bit of an experiment with myself and just practice yoga. And I wanted to be able to balance my body on my arms. And honest to God, I really wish I'd started filming my fails, like, and from where I started, because I couldn't even lower my body to the floor just to do an up dog, you know, the vinyasa, or chaturanga, or whatever they call it, or do a crow pose. So I was trying to master all these arm balances. And then this one particular one that I did, I think it's called a hurdler's pose, and I did it. And no one was around to see it. And I was like, oh my God. So I filmed it and then I put it on Instagram. And I remember ringing Tom, and I was like, and he was busy. And I was like, you need to see my Instagram right now. He's like, what? I'm busy. I went, I don't care. You need to look at my Instagram. Look what I just did. I'm Superwoman. So yeah, no, I'm practicing. I feel like I'm getting stronger and stronger. And it just goes to show, if you stick to something that's hard and you think it's hard, keep doing it, because your body gives in, and the rewards and the benefits you get from it are outstanding, not only for your mind, but I'm a big, huge advocate now for yoga. So that's kind of what I'm sticking to. Maybe I'll go back to weights, but I just want to give it a while and see what happens.
It was very impressive. What I caught her doing was extremely impressive, and I was like, wow, oh my God. You know, you, like you were saying, you're sticking to yoga, and that helps you mentally as well as physically. And you know, before we kind of finish up, what, you know, because you have had some ups and downs, and you know, as you said, you've struggled with body issues and then various other things, postnatal depression after you had Lexi, and just how do you now, at this age that you're at now, like, protect your well-being? And what are your go-tos if you're starting to feel unbalanced? What do you go to? What do you reach for? What products do you use?
Well, yoga now is my main one, and if I can do it, if I've got the time, even if it's just 10 minutes, and I think just the breathing thing is so important. I think there's a supplement I take called L-theanine, which is really, really good. It's an amino acid, and it's really good for calming. It's also good of an offset for caffeine as well. So if you have caffeine and you have L-theanine, you know, if you get the jitters, that's a really good one. It also helps with sleep. It has it in actually protein powder, L-theanine. So that's a good one. Yeah, so I'd say yoga, that as a supplement, just really that. I don't really take many supplements anymore. I used to have like a medicine cabinet full of everything, and I chucked everything because I've been feeling so much better with just taking a regular vitamin and just eating good, healthy food. But talking, I'd say having a conversation with someone who you're close to. I think just talking is so important. And Tom's my person that I talk to, if you know, or Ross or Kelly Condon, Zara. You know, I think that whenever there's a problem, you're getting something off your chest. I think also having, even if it's not advice you're wanting, it's just someone to be there. If you're just feeling a little bit of a wobble or feeling a little bit like unsure of yourself. But I think as I'm getting older, I'm caring less about what other people think, even though I'm so sensitive. I'm not saying yes to everything anymore. I'm not spreading myself thin. I'm putting more priorities in place, what make me happy, and saying no to the things that I go, well, what's that going to do for me? Do you know what I mean? Does that deserve my time? And I think that having the balance, I think also being happy at work is a good thing. If you're unhappy in work, talk to someone, figure out the reasons why. And I also think when you have a break, even if it's the weekend, just Real Housewives.
Oh yeah, watch the Real Housewives.
The American ones, don't watch them. That was another thing. Sorry.
That's our guilt.
Oh my God!
That's our
Real Housewives. Oh, we need to talk.
That's our other guilty pleasure, is the Real Housewives of the American ones especially, and you know we really bonded over that. But you're right, and do you know what I think is the crux of kind of what you're saying there? It's the conversations. It's the open conversations, being able to get things out of your own mind, and whether it's to somebody else, whether it's to be heard, or whether it's to to vent, whichever. Those conversations are so important, aren't they?
Yeah, of course. I think also listening. I think listening to someone, to someone else, I think that can make you feel good. Is that selfless or selfish? To make yourself feel good from someone else's misery. What is? I feel so good about myself. I listen to them moan at me all day.
No, it's good. It's all right. Oh, my love. Listen, thank you so much for being my final guest. You've been absolutely brilliant. And we've ended on such a lovely note because, this whole season for me and all of this series that I've done, this is the end of series 6 now. It's all been about conversation and all been about kind of, making people not feel alone and to have these open, frank conversations so that we can get things off our chest and people do listen.
Well, I hope so. I hope some people are listening to this.
They will be. Thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you with me.
You're welcome, and I've had a ball. Thank you so much for listening.
And thank you for being so open and honest as well. You can catch Steph playing Cindy Cunningham weekdays on Channel 4 at 6:30pm and E4's First Look at 7pm. You can also follow her at Instagram. She might not be there for much longer. at Steph Waring Instagram. For more wellbeing, fashion and beauty, you can always visit us at our website www.thecapsule.co.uk, where you can also catch up with our previous podcast episodes by visiting the In Conversation page and subscribing to any of our podcast channels and YouTube. We are now taking a break over the summer, but I hope we've given you lots of food for thought this series on how to look after yourselves over the coming months. We will be back for series 7 during the autumn, where I can promise you lots more wonderful guests and conversations of inspiration. I want to say a huge thank you to all of my amazing team that helped to bring the podcast to you, our wonderful editor Kat, the gorgeous Becky, and all of the team at Distorted. And thank you to Harrogate Springwater for your continued support. And most importantly, thank you to you guys at home for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this series, and I hope you all have the most amazing summer. We're finally free. Yay! I will be back in September, so all that's left for us to say today is goodbye. So it's goodbye from Steph.
Bye.
And goodbye from me. This episode of The Capsule in Conversation was brought to you by Harrogate Springwater. Bottled at source, Harrogate Spring offers a pure, refreshing taste with a delicate blend of naturally occurring minerals and electrolytes, perfect for healthy hydration.